Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this space of Edmonds Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Tim Olson. I'm the pastor here. Been here for about 11 years, and I'm just glad that we can open up this space for community gathering time, for community conversation. It's just lovely to see when people can gather and have thoughtful, respectful conversations. So thank you for your participation here today. Just a housekeeping note, if you need to use a restroom today while you're here, it's just out. If you go out into the lobby where you came in, and then there's a hallway that goes that way, and there's a sign that says restrooms, and they're at the end of the hallway there if you need that. And if you brought your water bottles and you need some water, there's also a water cooler out there as well. And if you're of the praying sort, we do have a prayer wall out there that's a community prayer wall, and you want to write up any prayers up there, you're more than welcome to do that as well. But thank you for being here, and I'm going to thank Alicia for coordinating all this and bringing us together, and I'm going to pass it off to her.
Thank you, Pastor Tim. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I really appreciate that you're spending a Saturday rainy afternoon with us, either in person or watching us online. And this will be available for everyone to see online later today. My name is Alicia Crank. I am the founder of Northwest Washington Civic Circle. I've been an Edmonds resident for almost 11 years now, and care about what happens in this community. And when this topic came up as something that we could potentially have a conversation around, I really wanted this to be about a community conversation, not only hearing from our elected representatives, but also members of our community who are volunteering their time and their talent to advocate or to be able to present on the pros and cons of this important discussion. So a couple of housekeeping rules. One, for those that are watching from at home, hi. If you are in the room here, we do have presentation slides that will be shown on the various monitors. For those of you watching remotely, you should have the link to our event page that also has these presentations, so you can follow along. Also, those in the room, there is a QR code that you'll see up on the screen, which also takes you to that event page with the presentations and other information. So if you want to utilize that as well, so you can follow along or look ahead, you can also do that as well. So with that, we have 2 hours to get this done. I know that this could go way longer if we wanted to, but who really wants that? So what we're going to do is spend the first hour with the city's presentation, which is 30 minutes, and then a 30-minute Q&A. The second hour would be focused on the community members who are part of the Pro and Con committees, who will also have a presentation that will present back to back. And then we will have that last 30 minutes for Q&A as well. We will have a microphone set up here, and the conversation will be moderated by myself and also with Jenna Peterson from the Daily Herald. So with that, I am going to turn things over to the city for their presentation.
Oops. Let's see if this works. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and I really appreciate the abundant turnout. This is a nice audience to have here. Also want to thank Alicia Crank and Pastor Tim Olson for allowing us to come into this community room and welcome us so nicely. This is just going to be a half-hour presentation of the city's plan, and with that, I'm going to turn this over to Vivian Olson.
Is this one working? Yes? Okay. Great. Well, we're going to take you through the slideshow, and we've prepared this information for you, basically so that everybody is well informed about what the annexation vote would mean to you. We all know and love Edmonds so much. We are very proud to have the tagline that we've given ourselves, the gem of the Puget Sound. We have 43,000 residents, more or less, and our residents, through a city survey recently, have given the city very high marks for exceptional quality of life. We are a full service city, and I think this is important to point out. Not every city is. That includes offerings of police, fire, and EMS through a contract with South County Fire, parks, streets, economic development, and public utilities. What is South County Fire? Also referred to as the RFA. Those expressions are kind of interchangeable in our conversations. It is the organization that we have been contracting with. It's a municipal government that is providing fire and EMS, emergency medical response services to the City of Edmonds. Currently by contract, which is why on this map we're shown with a hashtag. We have 3 fire stations that continue to be used and operated by the RFA currently. We do own them and take care of the exterior of those buildings and the capital improvements as needed. There's 15 stations total, and you can see the very wide berth of the RFA. All the unincorporated areas shown, as well as Mill Creek, Linwood, Briar, Mount Lake Terrace. Linwood and South County 1 had merged to become the South County Regional Fire Authority, and then all of those other entities besides Edmonds have annexed in since. Our residents have said that fire and EMS services are in fact our top priority. And if we go to the next slide on the community survey results, it'll actually show that exact number, and it wasn't that close even to our next thing. Edmonds does not have its own fire department. We have become aware that that's something that not everybody is currently knowing. So we want to get that word out. Since 2010, the city has contracted with South County Fire, and that contract expires at the end of 2025. Under South County Fire, our Edmonds residents have been paying below the cost for life and fire and EMS services, and that's mostly about the overhead. South County Fire is unable to continue the contract without a substantial cost increase. Providing fire and EMS services is going to cost more no matter how we approach it and do it going forward after 2025. Oh, you got it. So there are several options that have been explored. Continuing a contract with South County Fire was one of those options. Starting our own fire department, or I should say reinitializing one, which we had one before 2010, or using other fire and EMS providers, or annexing to the Regional Fire Authority. Annexing to South County Fire is the lowest cost option to provide the level and quality of fire and EMS service that we have been receiving. Thank you for bearing with us with our tech difficulties. It's giving us some pause in between our slides for you to digest it. Thank you. Susan has the hard part of this job. Okay. So this is the numbers. I mean, people have been wanting to know, what we're looking at and what we've been paying, what we're going to be paying. And this is the what we are currently paying slide. 72 cents per 1,000 is our current property tax levy in the City of Edmonds. Of that 72%, 48 cents of that has been going towards the contract. Property owners also pay a 28 cents per 1,000 EMS levy, which would be going away. So this current profile to show you what you are currently paying, if you have the average valued home at 2,500 square feet, your current EMS impact and fire and EMS impact, it would be $680.73 in the current year. Yes, that's annual. Thank you. Okay. And if annexation had already been in effect in 2025, that rate would be $1.16 per 1,000 plus a benefit charge. So for that same home of 2,500 square feet valued at the average value of Edmonds, $895,700, that would give another $437 more or less, which is $37 more or less a month, bringing the fire and EMS cost to $1,117.71 annually. I think this is a really important slide. It does show that even post annexation, if the ballot measure were to pass, that Edmonds still falls really neatly in the middle of the pack in terms of the taxation that is being asked of our residents. We have been extremely low. We would be off the chart to the left if we were showing that current 72 cents plus 28, which is $1. Lower than Mukilteo, which would be, very close to that. But I will point out that Mukilteo has had 2 failed property tax levies. They're finding it impossible to provide all of their services at the prices that are being charged to the residents and taxes there. Yeah, I think this is a really helpful one to see.
And this, oops, there we go. And this slide shows all of the costs of our government. So this is not just strictly RFA, but this is the total cost of government. So we line up very conveniently with Linwood, Mill Creek, and these are cities that are of comparable size as well. So this is the total cost, but it does not include the benefit charge.
On the far right, Stanwood. So just to also address the bigger elephant in the room, if you will, this is not our conversation about the RFA kind of has this additional context. No matter what, we needed to decide what we were going to do about the future of fire and EMS services because our contract's ending at 2025. So we would be having this conversation one way or the other. But we do have this additional backdrop of our budget challenges, which we've been open and transparent about and talking about for over a year. With the fiscal emergency that we're in, having years of increasing costs for services, just general inflation in that way, as well as some really extraordinary increases from insurance as one example. We've had a 39% increase just year over year from 2023. And we've probably noticed that at home also, that our insurance has gone up quite a bit. Utilities up significantly, 4.7%, fuel up 14.2%. And, meanwhile, the city has at its disposal a 1% increase. That's the max that can be assessed through councilmanic ways. To get more from taxation, it has to be through a general levy, which we have not done for many years.
And okay, so this is the 1%. The 1% will bring in $107,000 annually, and that's what the 1% would bring in, and that's just a drop in the bucket for regular municipal spending. So the 1% is really constraining all of our property tax revenues. Thank you.
So in terms of addressing the problem, we have already endured some pretty extensive cuts that people have noticed and been sorry, things that are getting missed, staff members and programs that are gone. Additionally, there's going to be another $1.5 million cut still this year that will be announced before, well, probably by March or mid-March. So that's going to be more impacts of cuts that we're going to be feeling. And even to sustain where we're at with those cuts, there's still borrowing going on and the use of reserves. And at this point, we don't have reserves left to use. And obviously, as we all know from our own homes, you can't just keep borrowing money. That's not sustainable. So if annexation was approved, the city EMS levy would be eliminated. The property owners would then be paying for fire and EMS services directly to the RFA, and no longer would the city be turning around and paying for a contract. The city would continue the general levy of 72 cents per thousand. with the 48 cents that had previously come from that general fund, enabling Edmonds to cover some of the other basic services that are currently uncovered and being paid for by those borrowing. So what happens next? There is a ballot measure, and the residents of Edmonds get to decide what happens next regarding the future of fire, with annexation being the choice that is being proposed. Mill Creek, Briar, and Mount Lake Terrace have already taken that step and are annexed into South County Fire. And I will point out that Mount Lake Terrace and Linwood, Linwood also being in the RFA, are some of our closest collaborating cities on pretty much all municipal matters. If the annexation fails, the city would not have a known stable funding source to contract for the fire and EMS in 2026 and beyond. Like I mentioned earlier, we are looking at significant increases in the cost of fire and EMS, and we've had challenges paying for fire and EMS even at the current prices. So there would most definitely be draconian cuts if future levies were to not pass. One way or the other, we are looking at asking for increases in tax revenue one way or the other. The city's ability to maintain the current level of service, would be jeopardized if that additional money didn't come in. So this slide, if you want to take a picture of it, gives you a lot of other upcoming opportunities to come hear presentations and to hear Q&As and to take part and ask your own questions. Of course, council's also always available to answer your questions when you reach out to us by email. You can reach the entire council at council@edmondswa.gov, or our individual contacts are also on the webpage. So with that.
Well, and then there's also a specific email address on our webpage, on the council webpage, and then also on the page listed here, where you can get specific questions answered by through email as well. So there is a specific email address as well. We didn't include this here, but we should probably make that note. And the other thing that we probably need to mention is that and we've mentioned it here, but do want to point out that you can put in, we will have a calculator presented on our webpage so you can get real numbers. It's going to be attached to what the parcel, the assessor's office has for your parcel, and then you can put in some actual numbers so that you can get it really personalized to your own home. So that'll be coming in probably in the next several days. We're working on it. So with that, I think we are ready to take some questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And we are going to go into the Q&A section, but I'm going to kick things off first. So one of the things, so first of all, thank you very much for presenting. Also, if anyone missed any of the slides, they are available on our event webpage at northwestciviccircle.org. One of the things we were able to do as part of people registering, either watch in person or online, was to submit questions that some of those will be asked through the course of this afternoon. One of the things that I noticed was a trend, and I wanted to address that trend going into both sessions of the Q&A. The overarching theme that came from the questions submitted was communication and transparency. The current administration ran on a commitment of communication and transparency, which was endorsed by several current city council members. However, there is a sense that this is not the case, with community members expressing frustration on learning about important conversations and decisions, quote, well after the fact. Their latest examples center around the possible RFA annexation. While the city has stated that it cannot advocate for a position on the ballot measure, as recent as an article that's in the Edmonds Beacon, communications that residents have discovered during a public records request between the administration and the public affairs organization that was hired contains language that suggests otherwise. To quote something that was written by Mayor Rosen to the public affairs person, says, "You have also shared that you have never had opposition like the one that exists in Edmonds, increasing the need for us to be more collaborative on strategy and execution. How do you address the concerns that the city is not educating from a neutral position? And are those concerns, in your opinion, warranted?"
That's a really interesting question. And there were actually several things that kind of got bound up in that. Let me first address the issue about having public affairs support, which was sort of recently discussed in the media and introduced to the community with the bias that that was a hidden expense. It was not. The administration, and we're not members of the administration, by the way, as council members, but the administration has the right to, has contracting authority. Up to $150,000, and on a regular basis makes moves and purchases in that realm under $150,000. And we only have one communications person in the entire city, and that person has a pretty full plate all year round doing the regular business of the council or of the city. Sorry. So when there was something huge, a huge communications project going on that takes a lot of effort, instead of hiring another full-time employee when they were needed only for a shorter project, the person was hired as a consultant, you know, on a more temporary basis for the term of the project. So that is what was going on in that regard. So I am sorry for the impression to the public, but basically we bought a full-time employee, but for a limited term.
And I would add, the work of the city cannot be in an advocacy position. The presentation you've just seen is strictly based on the facts of how we've progressed. I am sorry that it's, you know, getting public information out is always, you know, up to, you know, it's clearly not the people in the room. I mean, you got the information, you're here, you're listening, and we so appreciate that. And talk to your neighbors. I mean, all communication is going to be imperfect. I want to, and in staying with the communication and the level of transparency, you know, it kind of popped up as a surprise to some people that we needed to have a consultant. But let me talk about why we need to have a consultant. We haven't gone out for a levy in a long time, and making sure that we follow the rules that are very specific to election campaigns. School boards do this on a regular basis. They do this on matters that are important to the community, but they do it on a regular basis. I don't remember the last time here in Edmonds we've had a vote that goes to the community, which is of significant community importance. I've lived here for over 20 years. I think maybe one was with the annexation with Esperance. I know that you've all experienced votes with the school board. There are public disclosure commission rules that we have to follow. And we've got lists, we've had training on how to stay in the education role, which is where we are today. Later on this morning or this afternoon, you'll have advocacy roles being presented with the pro and con groups, which I think will help distinguish between, you know, education and then the different sorts of roles. This is something that is technically complicated. We spent probably an hour and a half at one of our council meetings talking about the rules that we can and cannot take on, the roles that we can and cannot take on during these community presentations. But we do, you know, you saw the list of dates. We are getting out there in the community and really appreciate the community support from facilitators like Ms. Crank and the other groups to be able to get the message out. And we're going everywhere as a part of that. Thank you for the question, Alicia.
I'll just add one more thing that I'm drawing a blank. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'll incorporate it.
Okay.
When I remember to get
Thank you so much for answering that question. So with that, I'm going to hand over moderating for the Q&A to Jenna Peterson from the Daily Herald. And those of you in the audience who would like to ask a question, you can line up right here. And we have about 30 minutes. And I will interject when it's time to start wrapping up.
Okay, great. Thank you. Is this working? Okay, great. Yeah, so I think the way we're going to do it is I have some questions prepared, and some of them were the ones sent in from audience members. And then, like Alicia said, if you want to line up at the microphone, if you have a question, I think we'll just alternate between the two. But just to start, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about what exactly would happen if the ballot measure fails. I understand that there is a temporary contract that's been negotiated in the event that it does fail, and that both parties can agree to enter it and extend it for 1 year at a time. So yeah, if you could just talk a little bit about that and how much that would cost compared to annexation.
It would be a parity contract, meaning that it's costing more or less the same as it would cost for us to be annexed. But there is that additional cost and responsibility associated with maintaining the buildings and in any capital investments in the buildings. And back to what you said about what would happen, it's, we are concerned about the funding stream. We don't have the money to pay for that contract right now.
Okay, thank you. Do you have anything to add?
No, that's exactly what I would have said. There's exactly what Vivian said.
Okay, great. Yeah, we can take our first audience question.
Hi, I'm Theresa. This is my neighborhood. Thanks again, Pastor Tim, for continuing to make this our ad hoc community center. So I have a follow-on question to Jenna's question. You stated that you don't have the money to pay for the contract if the annexation majority vote is a no. But we know that there's a levy planned called a levy lid lift for an election in 2025. And so is it okay to assume that if annexation is a vote no, that the size of the levy, the new levy would cover the cost of fire and EMS on a contract basis?
I would answer that. We haven't met as a council to talk about that part at all. If this annexation does not pass, we will certainly have to consider all of the options. And but as a council, we have not prepared ourselves for that. For that consideration. It's a significant consideration. And so, and this is why we're coming to the community.
Yeah. So here's my follow-on question that's still related. As you guys know, I lead a program of volunteers that helps moderate income seniors and disabled individuals get a significant cut of their property taxes. Everyone is getting at least 50% of their property taxes eliminated. It's called the Senior and Disabled Property Tax Exemption Program. So here's the details. If we pay for fire and RFA through annexation, people who have received that property tax exemption, they don't get any cut in the cost of their fire and RFA taxes, okay? But if we vote no for annexation, and if on the next levy coming to the voters, we vote yes, that is a voter approved levy, and individuals who are over 62 or disabled of any age, whose net disposable income, and I'm a cost accountant by training, so you get my jargon. If your income minus your cost of medical is 75,000 or less, those taxes are forgiven by the auditor. So it's a big deal for the citizens that I'm advocating for. And one of my other fellow volunteers, Dave, is here at this forum. It is a huge deal. They are not going to pay for this increased fire and EMS if it's paid for through the city's second ballot issue coming. But if we pay for it by voting yes for annexation, they don't. So I'm asking you as individuals, please vote no.
I'll just add to that, though, that you are assuming that there's going to be a yes vote. And if there isn't a yes vote, where our highest priority, highest need is no longer funded. Chief Eastman.
So I guess I'd just like to clarify that the RFA, the folks that get a senior discount or the disability discount, it's attributed to fire tax too. So what was stated is not actually true. If they go through the county and they get a property tax exemption from the county, that is attributed to the RFA also, and it also includes the benefit.
I had heard that as well. Thank you, Chief.
Okay, I'll move on to unless you had anything you wanted to add.
I was just, since there seems to be a disagreement, we will have to get back to you with the information on that and can do that.
Okay, there's another level of detail. When you report your net disposable income, it depends, the county has, or this is state law, the state has looked at 3 different ranges. If you are in the range of 64,000 to 75,000, which is the range of where most of the individuals we're meeting with to apply are, only voter approved levies are forgiven. There is no reduction in the assessed value of your, or excuse me, there's a modest reduction, less than 10% reduction in the assessed value of your house. This is the level A, the level B, or the level C senior exemption. So, I mean, I do this for hours and hours a month. So please vote no.
I'll ask the next audience submitted question and then we'll go back to your question. Yeah, someone asked in the event of annexation into the RFA, will the RFA have full control over the services provided and the costs of those services? What happens to rolling stock and fire stations? Would Edmonds personnel be joining the RFA as employees, or would current RFA members replace existing Edmonds staff?
For starters, we do not have existing Edmonds staff because we have been served by contract and the RFA personnel since 2010. What was the first part of that question?
Will the RFA have full control over the services provided and the costs of those services?
The answer to that is yes. And I think that there was a program with the RFA just last week that's probably also available on the website for Northwest Civic Circle, where that their intentions and the way they operate is fully chatted about there.
And I would add that if the annexation passes, there will be an interim liaison position from a resident of Edmonds that would be advisory to the South County Commissioners Board, and they would provide their input. I've watched some of those meetings, and the liaisons are just as fierce advocates for their communities, and their comments are absolutely considered in their discussions. So there will be a temporary liaison position until the next general election vote.
Okay, great, thank you. And yeah, we can take our next audience question.
I live in Edmonds, been about a 50-year citizen. How much is this special election? How much is the city paying the county to conduct this election?
Putting on any ballot measure is an expense because, of course, there's mailing and all of the other administration that goes into an election. I want to say 250,000. Does anybody know the sum?
I've heard it's similar to that. And I think that the city is planning one mailing. But the fee to the county, you're right. It's based on the per capita here in Edmonds.
So do you think this was a great use of public funds to have this single issue when the city's very low on funds to begin with? That's rhetorical.
It's rhetorical. Okay. Well, I will address it to a certain extent. We could not wait until November, the next general election, or the primary, if there is a primary here in Edmonds with our regular election cycle. This is information that we needed to have now because we would need to have the timeline expressed to us, making sure that we got through all of the hurdles and all of the processes that we need to do internally for budget, for all the other things to make sure that things flow smoothly. We had to come to the voters here in April. And then the next levy we're anticipating for November. We don't know what that's going to precisely look like, but that's what we're anticipating doing.
This is a very important issue, and it is one that the voters decide. It's not something that we can decide internally as a city. So, you know, it is just kind of the cost of doing business to have a ballot measure. But every ballot measure, I believe, even if you have 2 or 3 of them lumped together on the same election, I think you pay per ballot measure. But my counterpart here is saying that she doesn't think that's the case.
An election is an election, whether it's one issue or.
Yeah, thank you. And something I don't think we've talked about yet is the representation that Edmonds would have on the Fire Commission, on the Board of Commissioners in the event of annexation. So if you could talk a little bit about what that would look like.
If I could give the mic to Paula Swisher. She's here as as a representative for the city of Briar, who does not yet have an elected commissioner, and she can speak to exactly what that looks like.
Well, I can actually speak to some of the other stuff too. Hi, I'm Paula Swisher. I am an Edmonds kind of kid. I was born and raised in Stevens Hospital when it was only 2 floors high. I graduated from Edmonds High School, not the blasphemy that sits on that corner today. Those 2 names shouldn't go together. We were arch rivals. You don't put them together. Moved out of my parents' house when I was 19. We lived on 217th Street. I now work for the City of Briar and have for 22 years. I am the city clerk treasurer, so I do multiple duties. One of those has to do with money. I can confirm that the RFA, if you annex in, that is a voter approved measure and it is eligible for the, you know, discounts for disabled, low income, all of that. It happens in Briar, already happening. Also, as the liaison, while I don't have a vote when the board votes on measures, I have felt that I am treated, in some cases, when I chime in, my take on things holds a little more weight, and I would totally recommend to the City of Edmonds that you have one of your staff who is very involved with knowing what the council's wishes are, what the citizens' things are, be your representative to the board. Because there have been times when they're discussing issues and I pipe in with I actually work in government. I do this every day. This is part of my day job. And it has actually changed the decisions of some of the commissioners and changed how they voted so that they heard it from somebody who's actually in the middle of a government working, having to take care of those dollars, having to take care of the taxpayers. You will have that. But the other thing that I checked into, because I was at one of your other meetings, and at that one I heard people talk about how, well, you know, we won't have control. Newsflash, you don't have control right now. You have no vote. You have no one who sits on that board that is your person representing just the City of Edmonds because you're a contract city. Once you are annexed, you will eventually have that person who is from the redistricted area that represents you. However, I asked, and Christy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it wouldn't be in 2026 when they entered, it will be in 2027 that there are 2 at-large positions that come up for election. That means 2 people from the city of Edmonds can actually run for those at-large positions. So you could end up with 2 people from Edmonds who represent you and have a direct effect on how being part of the RFA affects all of the citizens. I've read a lot of this stuff that I see about your situation currently. I will just say Breyer was in the exact same situation. We were looking at doubling our cost for the RFA. And how I would like to explain it to all of you is you live on this side of the street and your per thousand cost is 75, 76 cents per thousand. The people living on the other side of the street are paying $1.26 this year, $1.26. Now, think about the services that you want when you pick up that phone and you call 911, whether it's EMS, whether it's fire. You want somebody to come. It's an insurance policy. You hope you never have to use it. So as the cost for fire continues to increase, as everything else does, the people across the street, you're wanting them to take more of the burden to pay for those services. As a taxpayer, if you were that person who they came and said, well, we need more money to provide you your basic services, and you knew that the guy living across the street from you wasn't paying his fair share, what would you say to them about providing that money?
Yeah.
You'd say no. And that's kind of the position that everybody's in right now.
Thank you. We'll go to the next, audience question.
Bill Krepik, I'm an outsider. I'm your neighbor from Woodway. I've done a lot of research on fire and EMS systems for probably the last 5 years. I'm a business guy background. There's a lot of questions that have tried to be answered by the city and by the RFA. But, you know, those questions, if you really look at them, they're not answered at all. The speech that was just given about that if you live on the other side of the street, you ought to be concerned about the fact that you're paying less. Oh, okay. So anyway, the speech that was just given, I think, points out one of the things that I've been very concerned about, and that is the focus on the cost of service rather than the focus on the price of service. The RFA is basically a monopoly. They have the state-given right to price any place that they want to within certain bounds of what the tax levy is. But what we're talking about is a price of service to Edmonds, not a cost of service. We've asked, I don't know how many times, the whole group of the Edmonds people have asked how many times will you please tell us what the cost of your service is? Edmonds had a 10-year contract that was cost plus based. Now that contract was ramped up by 50% between 2019 and 2023. And to go to annexation, it's going to be ramped up by another 70%. Why is that? Why is the RFA unable to actually manage their business, given that they have all kinds of economies of scale? Why can they not manage their business to be able to produce a cost-based system? It's just, talk about being unfair. What's being unfair is that Edmonds is being asked to solve a problem that the RFA should have faced and they should have managed over the last 4 or 5 years. Now,
Sorry to interrupt, but if we could keep the questions as short as possible and try to get to the question.
Here's my real
Thank you.
question to the council members. In 2016, Fitch Associates did a study for the town, for the city. And that study was based on trying to look at different options going forward of how to reduce the cost of the fire service. It was a very detailed study. It went into the staffing that was done in certain stations. It went into the difference between the medical service and the fire service. And there was a recommendation in that report that the city could save $1.5 million by optimizing the staffing to provide for the 85% of the 911 calls that are medical services, to hire more paramedics and to have less firefighters. Nothing was ever done on that study in 2016. Yet the city then went in 2024 and they had a study that basically didn't deal with any of that cost issue. And the study wound up saying that the RFA was the least cost, the preferred alternative. My question to the city council members is, why is there such a difference between the 2016 study and the 2024 study? Why did you not ask for the 2016 study to be redone to look at the actual costs and to provide information on what kind of alternative fire and EMS staffing could be done? I'd like to know what kind of detail you went into, who you talked to, how much work you did to look at the alternatives for fire and EMS when you came to the conclusion that the RFA was in fact the least cost alternative. I'd really like to know how many people you talked to, where was the financial analysis, where's the details on these alternative systems to allow you to make that decision?
Thank you, Mr. Krebik. And he has submitted these questions to the city as well. So I've been on council, the same as with Ms. Olson here. We've been on council together for the last 5+ years. We have an annual report that has been given to us every single year. We have a report by South County Fire, and the report is coming in on Tuesday. Please join us. We're going to be talking about South County Fire. South County Fire is going to give us a report, and then approximately a month later, they'll come back so we can review the report, and then we will come back and ask a lot of the questions. We do review the costs, the performance, and the other items that are provided to us in the reports. And we also have performance standards just to make sure that we are getting the right services put to our community. A few years ago, 3 years ago, where we raised the contract level, but 3 years ago that we raised the contract level by $1.5 million because the services that were needed, we needed to pay more for. So that's what we ended up doing. And so that's a part of the cost. And everyone who's been, going through the last 4 years of just life on earth here, the inflation rate has been significant for the city as well as for all the other sort of functions inside our community. And I don't think that the fire district was at all exempt from them as well. It was about 25% inflation rate across 5 years, and that's just been unheard of. And so those are some of the reasons why you see such a great difference in the prices. And as we spoke earlier, our ability to tax, the 1% will give us $107,000 additional each year. So those are the questions. Those are the answers that I hope will resonate with what we've had to do.
I think that Mr. Krebik was also getting at whether or not separating EMS from fire was an approach that should be looked at. And we basically went to Fitch and asked expressly, what are our options going forward, being completely open to any and all opportunities. I have since followed up with some information that I was fed by Mr. Krebik about that opportunity to separate. And I've spoken to an ambulance company that does not do fire, and I've spoken to a different fire consultant at his recommendation. And, the other contractor actually or consultant kind of validated the Fitch report and the people who did it and said that if something had, screamed out that, oh, you should be considering this other thing, even if we hadn't expressly asked for it, that they would have offered it up. And the ambulance company wasn't that supportive or gung-ho, even though it would have been business for them. So, and I was able to learn more about the collective bargaining situation and, new operators getting licensing in the state and so on. To me, it didn't seem like a strong option.
Thank you. We have time for 2 more audience questions, focused questions, so we can get them in as best as possible, which will then take a 5-minute break to switch over to the other 2. So one young lady had a comment to the follow-up question, and then the last question will be given to Mr. Pence.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. I'm one of your neighbors. My name is Kelly and I live in Mount Lake Terrace. And yeah, I work in financial literacy as an educator, creating content, and I'm recently single, so I've gone on a few dates with your firefighters. And so they've told me that it's really, really complicated. It's really difficult. Training's forever. You get kicked out all the time. You go back in years, and they spend half their time picking people up off the couches. So I think money is going to waste. Thank you.
Thank you for taking questions from the audience, live and in person. I appreciate the opportunity. My question picks up on what Mr. Krepik was addressing, and that is the options that have been studied and proved to be more expensive. I looked on the city website and I couldn't find those. I couldn't find anything other than PowerPoint slides with some numbers thrown up on them. I'm beginning to infer that maybe those studies were nothing more than a back of the envelope kind of effort. If that's wrong, and I'd be happy to be proved wrong, if there are substantive studies that document the truth of what you say, please post them on the website so that we can read them and analyze them and draw our own conclusions. Thank you.
If in fact the Fitch report is not up on the website, I will. Pat's saying it is. Okay.
Yeah.
So.
And-
Okay. Thank you.
And
Please
I
do
would
check it out.
Yeah, please do read it. And thank you for your question, although you and I have corresponded and I have offered the Fitch report to you and you declined it.
Okay. Yeah, I think that wraps up this portion of the discussion, and then we'll be taking a break. If I'm
Yes,
okay.
if the council members have any final thoughts they would like to share before we go into that break, you have a minute each to do so.
I just want to thank everybody for coming out today. I think this is really helpful to be able to, have some banter and back and forth. I think the Q&A did take us into a little bit of a pro and con already. But I am looking forward to, hearing everything that is exchanged during that period. And thank you to the members of both our pro and con committees for stepping up and putting the effort into that. I appreciate it.
And I would urge everyone, with your questions, please do send them into our specific RFA_info@edmondswa.gov email so that we can get it. It is on our website and that's where you're going to get a researched, thorough answer that is not just off the cuff, but you can also get that information for yourselves from the city. So thank you for attending. Really appreciate being able to be here today.
Thank you.
All right, thank you everybody for being here. We're going to take a short 5-minute break to switch over to the second part. Feel free to connect with each other during that time and we'll be right back. Okay, and welcome back to the second half of our community discussion. I am super grateful for the community volunteers who signed up to be appointed to the Pros and Cons Committee. Also, thank you again for supporting our work here at Northwest Civic Circle. Feel free to donate to us, it'll be great. I am grateful for community partners like we have with Pastor Tim and Edmonds Lutheran Church. But also to be able to underwrite and do all these other things for the community as well would be super helpful. So one thing I just kind of want to start everyone off with is that the council has a legislative responsibility to appoint 2 committees to write the ballot measure arguments or statements that will appear in the voters pamphlet that you will receive before the special election. The Pro Committee will write a statement in support, and obviously the Con Committee will write a statement in opposition. So they are going to speak to us, and first the Pros Committee will start, and their names of the members are there. So I am going to ask, each committee has 15 minutes to make their presentation. They will go back to back. So after 30 minutes, we will go into the collective community Q&A. The one request that we did get from audience members, specifically from the Con Committee, is that if you would explain what Edmonds Can Do Better is about, that would be great, because there was not a lot of information about where that came from. So with that, Jenna will still be the moderator for this discussion. And with that, we'll hand it over to the Pros Committee to start. And here is the fun little clicker.
Good afternoon. I'm Pat Hepler. I'm the chair of the Pro Committee. I'm also a retired firefighter with Edmonds and Fire District 1. I served 38 years and retired as a battalion chief out of the department. And I live in Edmonds and have since 1989. Go. Just, I'm going to give a quick perspective of the department from the beginning, just to have some background. And before we get into figures and other politics and stuff, I want you to know that the fire department was formed and organized in 1904. It was all volunteer. There was about 1,000 people in the city at the time. They only had a couple pieces of equipment, a couple pieces of hose and a ladder to start with. Over the years, in the 20s, they purchased a couple fire engines, had no water capability, but they could haul equipment. In 1938, they purchased this fire engine. It was the first one in the whole region that had a water tank and a pump. And it was used throughout the region, but it was specifically housed down in Edmonds and manned by our volunteers. During the 30s, we also started a first aid squad with a truck. So we did respond to sick people, people in need, even back in the 30s. In the 40s and 50s, call loads increased, demand increased. We incorporated a dispatch process down in downtown Edmonds, staffed by some city day staff during the day. And in the early 60s, we upstaffed with 4 paid people to have 24-hour service downtown and to manage that kind of the calls specifically. A little later in the 60s, we hired more personnel at about the same time that the downtown public safety complex was finished, and we staffed the downtown station with full-time staff during that time. During the 60s, we also had a station built up at Five Corners. Initially, it was a 1-story station and housed an engine, but in the early 70s, we staffed it with a crew of between 2 and 4 personnel, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We moved the duty staff up to the top of the hill to better cover the whole city. We did that throughout the 70s, and in the early 80s, the volume of calls and the availability, we had to restaff downtown station also, so we hired additional personnel to house down at downtown station. It used to be called Station 1, it's now called Station 17. Five Corner Station used to be called Station 2, it's called Station 16 now. We maintained the staffing in the 80s with the 2 stations. We had some incidents in 1980s where, let's see here. We had some incidents, I'm not going to get into specifics, but there were numerous incidents where staffing on the responses did affect the performance or affected the outcome. We weren't able to put fires out fast enough. You know, responding with only 2 people or 3 people on a CPR didn't have as favorable outcomes to some of the patients as we wanted. So we wanted to hire more people, and the community wanted to hire more people for the fire department, and we did. In the late 80s, we added personnel, and we met the need by having 3 people minimally staffed at all of our stations. In the early 90s, we purchased the fire station from Esperance, the county station. We hired 10 of their people and put on 2 others. So we had a full-time crew at the Esperance station 24/7, just like the other 2 Edmonds stations. And we kept it that way. That's how our staffing was until we merged with the fire district in 2010. We also benefited from having the state build a fire training center up in North Bend. Unfortunately, it's an hour-and-a-half drive away. It takes us out of service for full days when we go up to train there. But it allowed us to train our new people and also do our required live fire training up there. But we also trained, let's see here. We still trained locally. We still do. They train daily. And it's something that we have to do. The job is too difficult. Not only the fire job, but EMS, which we do mostly, 70 to 80% of the time, we're going on EMS calls and rescue calls. And they're not just picking people up. They're taking care of people is what we're doing. In 2003, we purchased the new fireboat, which is down in the port. It replaced a rescue boat we had for a number of years, and it allowed us to do a safer, more effective job of surface water rescue and shipboard firefighting than we were ever capable of before. But it was a Homeland Security grant, so it really didn't, we were able to, that cost was borne by the grant. So, how am I doing on time? Okay. Anyway, due to the fact that the call load since the inception of our department has increased remarkably, from under 100 calls in 1904 to the 60s where they were, 300-400 calls, to the 70s, it was, a couple thousand calls. And now, as of last year, we did 6,334 calls, taking care of over 42,000 people in the city, plus the Esperance area. Without the care and service you get from the fire department, you're going to lose that quality of life in this town. If it detracts from what we can do now, because the demands are ever increasing. They're not getting small. The city isn't getting smaller. We're not getting busy. We're not getting less busy. And the needs are still growing. So thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Hello, everybody. My name's Maria Montalvo. I'm a citizen of Edmonds, and I am a journalist, but I'm also a consultant with nonprofits. And just wanted to say for all 6 of us who are up here, we are part of this committee and a pro committee just to write a statement. We're not getting any funds from the city. We don't have a budget to work with. All of us are up here because we care about the issue and we're spending our own time to be here. So I'm grateful that all 6 of us are here to try to educate the community on this issue. But personally, I'm here just because I've had a lot of, not a lot of interaction, but I've had interaction with the fire department here as well as at home. I've had friends who have lost their homes in fires, and I can tell you they go up fast. And I very recently had to call EMS services for my mother. So I can tell you that you want to make sure that that person who is making split-second decisions in a life and death situation really has the ability and the capability and everything they need to do the best job because that's what they're there for. I was going to spend some time on a little bit of the facts, but I think the city presentation really spent a lot of time on this. We know the numbers, we've seen them a million times now. It is important to note again that the EMS levy is going away if we vote for the RFA, and also, that it's also important to note that the amount of money that the city has paid out of the general fund towards fire has changed over the years. It's not a set number because it is fundamentally a general fund. It pays for everything. It pays for fire, it pays for police, it pays for our parks, it pays for all of the things here in Edmonds that we love. And we know that we're facing a lot of budget shortfalls, which I think the city also went over in pretty good detail. So I think to build a little bit on what Pat said, Edmonds is a very high user of services. We know that South County Fire does great work. We know that their CPR survival rates are pretty much twice the national average. So we know we're getting some of the best service in the country to save our friends and family when they need it. And no, we don't have an Edmonds Fire Department. That's a very important clarification to make, but we do have firefighters who are here in Edmonds now from South County Fire who take care of us every single day. And I, for one, want to make sure that we have those same firefighters, those same EMS services giving us the same kind of long-term stability that we need, the rapid response time, the equipment, all of the things that we are going to continue to get from South County Fire, and of course we need it. We are the biggest user of EMS services in the entire area. We are not using these services. We are the largest user of EMS services, more than any other of the areas served by South County Fire. Our calls have increased over 12% in just 4 years. Our population is bigger and our need is bigger. We are not paying an equal rate to other cities. And I know we can say that doesn't matter, but it does, because fundamentally we have been underpaying for these services because the contract was written in 2010. But of course, it's also important to note that that was written at what the population was at the time and what the needs were at the time. So we're seeing an increase in cost, absolutely, but it's because we are using more services.
2 minutes left.
Oh my goodness, okay, thank you. The only way we can maintain our service levels is to become a part of South County Fire, to become a part of this RFA. We've been with them for 15 years and we just can't delay. Adam's going to talk about that more, but other options have been studied. Everything has been looked at, and there is nothing else that allows us to pay the same price that we're paying now, and certainly not less. Every other option is more expensive, and the wait and see approach will just mean it's even more expensive. And what we could end up doing by waiting is paying even more for less service, which I, for one, don't want to see. We trust South County Fire. They're the ones that we welcome into our home. We open the doors to our home to let these people in because we know we can trust them. If we trust them to come in our front door, I think we can trust them to give us the information that we need and to help us understand the situation. They are doing the best they can with the resources, and they are honestly giving us some of the best of themselves. And I'm grateful for that, because there's a reason why private business doesn't do fire and EMS services. Again, just to hit on the local control, we don't currently have local control because we don't have a voting member. So it gives us up to 3 representatives on that commission.
I'm
So-
sorry, your 15 minutes is up.
Our 15 minutes is up?
Yes, it is. So,
Oh, sorry, I didn't understand what you.
yeah, so, yeah.
We didn't start it.
I added a couple of extra minutes for the thing, but you can technically have,
When did we?
I was gonna ask if you want to give them some. I'm asking, it's up to you.
No.
Okay, so what I would then say is let's fast forward the slides up to the no for the 15 minutes, and then hopefully during the Q&A that Adam and others can lean into the part that you weren't able to get to.
You want to do my presentation? Yeah. I can try. I mean, it's a.
One more.
Okay.
Excellent. One more.
This on?
Yes.
No. Yes. Yellow light's on.
Did you turn that off? Hit the light.
Oops. Okay, thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank our hosts here for hosting our event and appreciate everyone showing up. I mean, this is good to have the community involved. And appreciate Alicia's question right at the beginning. So you put me on the spot to answer what does Edmonds can do better mean, right? And really what it is, it's a group of concerned citizens that thinks that our city can do better by hearing our voices collectively, our input into the process, so that we have a voice and a say in how our city moves forward, and we help make the difficult decisions, because we all recognize there are difficult decisions that need to be made as we're moving forward. This is just one of them. Unfortunately, I've heard, we're starting to get conflated here a little bit about the annexation issue, which I thought we were here to really discuss, versus the overall budget issue. If we want to have that discussion, I can go there, but that's not the purpose of our presentation. So anyhow, but let's kind of move forward. First of all, I'd like to see a show of hands of our first responders that are in the audience. And I just like to thank you for your service. And I can raise my hand too, because 50 years ago, I'm kind of old, I was a volunteer firefighter myself for a couple of years. So I really appreciate what you do and all the service that you're providing and the care that you're taking of our citizens. But what I'd like to do is, first of all, make sure that everybody understands whether we vote yes or whether we vote no, we are not going to lose our fire protection service going forward. The city has already made an agreement to carry the contract forward under different terms, albeit, but we are not going to lose the fire protection service. So voting no does not jeopardize our public safety. We've agreed to that already. What I'd like to do is ask two questions, and I'm going to try to answer them as well. One is, how did we get here? I think it's been a little bit a misnomer on actually how we got here. Really, what happened, that this cascading set of events has occurred as a result of South County Fire sending in a termination or cancellation of our contract notice to us in December 2023. Our contract expires in 2030. The original contract expires in 2030. So it's a little bit disingenuous to say that it expires in 2025. It was canceled unilaterally by the RFA on the city. So they've kind of taken the lead, and that's what's led us to this event today, is having to reconcile that cancellation notice. Let's talk about the contract itself, because I think it's a little bit misnomer. It's our current contract is what's termed a cost plus contract. We pay the full cost, fully burdened, union negotiated wage and benefits for the number of firefighters that staff our stations. Plus, we pay the overhead or a portion of the overhead expenses of the RFA, which includes, you know, all the administrative type things of that. One can argue the percentages on that, but our contract is cost plus. So suggesting that we haven't been paying our fair share or our fair cost is not correct. We are paying for the full number of firefighters that staff our stations. Our contract specifies the number of firefighters that staff our stations. The fact is that the other municipalities are maybe paying a little bit more than they should because we're all getting the same level of service. We're getting the same quality of service for our residents as Linwood, Montlake Terrace, Briar, et cetera. I'm not disputing, we're getting good service. The fact that we're not paying as much as others, I think that's where, you know, some of the other questions are relative to what is the true cost of the service that we're getting. The other point is, why did we get here? Edmonds has got a very high property tax base. It's very attractive for annexation. Our current contract, we're paying $12 million as a contract to the RFA for our current services. I haven't heard anyone suggest we're not getting good service. Going the annexation route, that price goes up to 20 million because of our assessed valuation. In my mind, it's all about the dollars. It's very attractive for them to come after a high property tax base to increase our cost of the $12 million contract to their price of $20 million. That difference is made up by the property tax base difference between a contract and going annexation. So in the next few charts, we'd like to just share with you a few other ideas for your consideration. And I'm going to turn it over to Theresa.
We want to protect our local control, our service needs, our tax dollars to benefit directly our community, not to go throughout the area. We want to protect our voting power, performance accountability, and future cost. Your tax bill is going to be the middle graph. If we vote yes, our taxes will go up 97%. It's right here, do the math. Renters, homeowners, businesses will all feel the pain of a higher than needed increase in our taxes. I want to share a specific concern that I have. I am particularly concerned with the fact that the mayor has hired a public relations firm, Liz Loomis Public Relations, for $64,000 to sell us, Edmonds voters, to vote yes. Yes, the mayor and the regional fire authority working with the public relations firm to sell us on annexation. We are bankrupt. We are broke, folks. We are having to borrow right now to pay our bills. We are $20 million in debt. And still the mayor hires a public relations firm for $64,000 to sell us on annexation, not to mention the just under 250 that it took to put it on the ballot. How did we find out about this? There was no transparency. How did we find out about this? There was no transparency like the mayor likes to tell us he is. The only way we, the taxpayer, were able to find out about this was through a public records request, where we found receipts and invoices, one for $8,000 as a payment to the Liz Loomis Public Relations firm. By the way, This contract with her expires the end of April, just after the ballot. We won't need her services after that because she's trying to sell it to us right now. So, is this a coincidence? Is there collusion going on? I don't know. Is this pure abuse of power? You decide if the mayor and the regional fire authority working with this PR firm to sell us on annexation can be trusted. If annexation is such a good idea, so good for the taxpayer, why the secrecy and why the backroom deal? I'm a retired registered nurse with 50 years of nursing experience. I too am appreciative to our firefighters. But I will tell you right now, through my experience and what I see going on, and this is not a discussion to be held right now with our fire services versus our EMS services, I say right now, we're going to vote no on annexation.
5 minutes, cool. Hi, Kevin Fagerstrom. I'm a 28-year resident of the City of Edmonds here, and I'm a retired cop. I was a cop for 40 years, and I love firefighters. They've saved my bacon more than once. The Edmonds Fire Department has been to my house at least 3 times to jumpstart my in-laws. And so I know that they provide a quality, absolutely necessary service. So this isn't about, we don't want this to be an adversarial situation. This isn't that we don't like the fire service, we don't like the firefighters. We do, we love them, and we'd like to see them remain. We're just concerned about costs and control. It was brought up that there's going to be these 2 at-large positions and that will be our opportunity to get ourselves onto the board so that we can help making these decisions. Well, there are 2 at-large positions that will be available to all of the citizens of the RFA. So Linwood, Terrace, Breyer, they will all have opportunities to put in for and be voted on for these. Pat, you're shaking your head. Am I wrong? So maybe if we get lucky and we have enough Edmonds people vote for the Edmonds representative, we might get on the board. But if there's somebody really popular from Linwood or Montlake Terrace and they run for the board and other people get voted, then Edmonds gets left out. We just simply, there's no guarantee that we will have someone on that board of commissioners that will make these decisions about where the future of the organization is and how to do a proper job of controlling the costs. And that's what Edmonds can do better is really all about, is we're asking you to hit the pause button. We want you to vote no, and we want the contract to be extended, and either the contract gets renegotiated or we look at other options. We believe that given the size of our city and our needs, that there are other options out there for providing quality service, for protecting our property and our lives and our families. Hit the pause button.
Thank you very much. Now we will segue over into our Q&A session. Just a couple of things to keep in mind that again, these presentations are online on our events website. So if you missed any of the slides or want to go back and review them, they are available there for you to be able to peruse right now. The other thing is, again, thank you all for being here. And thank you for reiterating again that you are all fellow community members that are volunteering your time and energy into this. So I would just like to remind everyone as they ask their questions to keep in mind that we are talking neighbor to neighbor. And let us practice civil discourse during this part. So Jenna will take over Q&A and then we will go from there.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so I have one question to kick it off, and then we'll do. It seems like we have a lot of audience questions, so we might be doing a lot of those. But For the pro committee, if you could just, as succinctly as you can, say what you're most worried about with a no vote, and if the con committee could do the same, what you're most worried about for if there's a yes vote. Pro committee can go first.
So the question is, what are we most worried about? I'm worried about a 17% reduction in the general fund to this city that is going to be devastating to police and fire and parks, and having to potentially sell off city assets like the Anderson Center. If you like a 70% cut in your general fund budget at a time when, folks, everything's getting more expensive, okay? Taxes are going up. This is nothing new under the sun. But if you want a 17% cut to your general fund, vote no and see how the gem of the Puget Sound becomes something a little less shiny and a little less beautiful.
And the con committee?
I'll do it. Again, it's all about costs for us. We think that this is simply getting too expensive. And our current contract with South County Fire is for $12 million. The 2026 contract cost is going to be $20 million. And if an $8 million cost in 1 year isn't a red flag, I don't know what is.
Thank you. And we'll start with audience questions. Again, just as a reminder, if you could keep it as brief as possible and get to the question, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, AJ Johnson. I am a firefighter with South County Fire. I also live in Edmonds. My wife and I chose to raise our family here because it's beautiful. You guys kind of stole my thunder, but for the con committee, what are some things that we could cut? What would be some things that you would like us to see cut if this fails? It's going to cost $8 million more that the city doesn't have. So, what are some things?
Great question. I don't think it needs to cost $8 million more. That's fundamentally wait, excuse me. Let me finish. Fundamentally, it's coming down to the number of firefighters that are staffing our stations, right? I think we're getting a fair deal with what we have. And I think we're getting, correct me if I'm wrong, we're getting the service that we've contracted for. So if we accept the RFA annexation, the only way you make up that $8 million difference is with adding 70% more firefighters to our stations. Tell me how that benefits us in terms of community, in terms of response time, because response time is basically a distance phenomenon. It's a number of stations and location. It's hard for me to understand where that $8 million, what it's paying for that we're not already getting.
Agreed. What do you want to cut?
No, I'd like to stay under our same cost plus contract.
But that's not what's been negotiated.
See, there we go. Now we're getting to the crux of it, is why did we end up in a negotiated settlement as we are? I mean, why did we relinquish? Why did we relinquish?
What do you want to cut?
No.
I bet it's not the police department, but that's what's going to end up happening.
No. What we're advocating for is get the community involved for that discussion in terms of how do we prioritize the money that we've got coming into the city. What other revenue sources could there be that comes in? Because the general fund, yeah, I mean, the property taxes are part of it, but sales taxes and all these other revenue streams are part of it. How can we increase that? That's not been part of the discussion. That's a broader budget discussion that wants to be had. That is mitigating the true discussion we need to have is at the budget. But the city has advanced this RFA vote in advance of the true discussion we need, which is on the budget. So pressing the pause button provides us a time between now and when they come back to us for a levied lid lift to have the discussion and how much money do we really need? Because this is just a drop in the bucket. This April vote is a drop in the bucket. We're suggesting press a pause button. Let's get the full transparency of what our true financial needs are, so that then we can come and vote on what we really need, not this piecemeal cut by or death by 1,000 cuts.
It's my turn, huh? I am a resident of Edmonds. I've been here with my beautiful wife for about 12 years. Louder. Okay. I was totally disinterested in city affairs until my wife dragged me into this. I guess what I don't understand is I'm not an attorney. I don't even play one on TV. There's an attorney here, I believe. You had a contract. So how can anyone break the terms of the contract in midstream? Am I missing something?
I guess as I am an attorney and I do play one on TV.
You do?
And sometimes, no, I don't. That's a joke. But it's probably a question better answered by the RFA, but I'll do my best to answer based on what I know. The contract that we executed with the RFA allows for either party to terminate 5 years before the actual end of the contract. So the termination by the RFA is within the parameters of the contract and is totally legal. Likewise, the city would have had the opportunity to terminate the contract as well. That was something that was negotiated a long time ago. And so.
Is that accurate?
Yeah.
So they have the right to terminate the contract?
Yeah, I mean,
Hey, you want to borrow mine?
hello? Are we?
Don't have to touch anything. Yeah, no, don't touch anything. It's all, you're good.
Good, thank you.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
see, I'm not techie, right? But yeah, I mean, you are correct. I mean, the contract terms provide a provision, and I'm not saying there was anything illegal done. I mean, it was legal. But the fact that the RFA unilaterally canceled the contract was perfectly legal. The consternation I have is that they did it a month before our new mayor took office and didn't take other provisions in the contract to renegotiate it, because there's a lot of provisions in the contract. Some of the provisions had renegotiation options in it. They didn't elect to go down that path with our new mayor. They canceled it before he took office.
So is the reason because they discovered that we have a high tax base and they want to take advantage of that?
I think you'd have to ask them.
Come on, spit it out. I mean, you know, it's okay.
I don't know the answer to that question because I wasn't privy to those negotiations about why the contract was terminated. But the reality is that the city contracted with the right to do that. And we are where we are now. And all of you are going to have a decision to make on April 22nd about whether you're going to vote yes or no on this initiative. And we here feel very strongly that you should vote yes, because it's the best thing for Edmonds at the best price.
I understand. But you know, it's very, very difficult to negotiate with a monopoly. And that's the problem. If they are a monopoly, how can you negotiate with them? They can name whatever price they want.
So sorry, sorry to cut you off. I've been covering the issue since December when I started at the Herald. My understanding is that the RFA could choose to terminate the contract as long as they give the city 2 years notice, which they did. And the City of Edmonds was one of the only cities still contracting with the RFA, so they were paying a higher cost than other cities for sorry, lower costs. Thank you. Yeah, that's why they
I'm going to correct a lower price.
Yeah.
Cost, we were paying the cost.
Okay. Yeah.
But not the higher price that they're advocating for.
Okay. Yeah. So I hope that answers your question, and I think we should move on so other people can get.
One last question. Does the RFA?
Sorry. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Brenda Brown. I live in Maplewood area and I've been a resident for 32 years. I know we have a huge budget crisis. Our taxes have to go up to cover some of our costs. There's probably going to be more things cut. But we all need to be able to rely on excellent services from the fire department, from the police. I've had to use them 2 times here in Edmonds. I used the fire department in Federal Way when my husband died. It's really important to have, you know, quality services, and we got to pay for those services. So one of my issues that I've learned about is that we have one fire department that is past its useful life, and it's going to have to be replaced. I've heard it's going to cost upwards of $20 million. If we join the RFA, it's their responsibility to cover that cost. They have reserves. If we vote this down and we end up having this fire station that has to be replaced, who the hell is going to pay for it? We don't have the reserves as a city. We don't have the tax base right now to pay for this. What are we going to do? Yes? No? What are your suggestions?
So I don't think we're saying higher taxes aren't going to be necessary. I think we agree with that. What we're advocating for is to mitigate the tax increase that's facing us. To the point that you're making relative to the fire stations, I've heard the same thing. Have I seen data to support it? No, I haven't. So I can't speak to you know, the need for a new station at that location. I just can't. I just haven't seen the data.
I mean, I don't want to answer the question since I completely misunderstood Alicia, and I feel bad that Adam didn't get to speak, but you know, everything is going to have to get paid for. We have services that we need to pay for. Prices have gone up. I wish we could all pay a lot less for things that we have. I would love to not pay for things and get them for free, but we've been having other people pay for us now, and I think it's time that we stop asking everybody else to pay for services that we are getting. So I agree with you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Theresa Everett, and I'm a resident of Edmonds. And to your point about the museum and the art center, I've mostly lived in the New York City area, and we're always had memberships to museums and the Avery Fisher Hall and everything else. And I love arts. But if you ask me if I'm going to sacrifice my control over EMS and fire over arts every day and twice on Sunday, because that's really important. That's life-threatening and life-saving versus the arts. And not that I'm putting arts down, but we have to, if we have to make choices like this, I'm voting for an independent, Edmonds-controlled fire department and EMS department than to say, well, we're going to have to give up an art center. The art center is not used to capacity, but that's besides the point. What I'd like you guys to talk about also is, again, the fees versus the cost, because I don't think that that's, people really understood that. And to also to talk about, you know, at the last presentation at the ECR, they said about that any way we look at it, whether we join the RFA or we do our own department or some permutation thereof, the difference is going to be about $2 million, less than $2 million between, it will cost a little bit more to have our own fire department, right? And, but on the fire department, we would control it. The RFA talks about how they're going to have all these other additional services, which we already have. And I would like to you guys to talk a little bit, please, more about cost versus fees and what it would take, like from all the numbers we have now, what it would take to have our own service or independent or associated with maybe like 1 or 2 other towns. Thank you.
All right. How long do I have? A good question. The short answer is that we need to take the time to explore those options because the Fitch report, how many are familiar with it? Probably not many of you. But over the last number of years, we've contracted with this company, Fitch and Associates, which specializes in this sort of information. Their 2016 report had a rather elaborate list of ideas to reduce the costs, and that was mentioned in one of the earlier comments. The latest rendition of the report showed a very myopic view of the options. What we're suggesting, we want to step back, explore all the options, many more than what the Fitch report had in it, to ultimately determine whether annexation is or is not the right option for us. The latest Fitch report that we received in 2024, an overlooked column in it actually showed an Edmonds Fire Department costing $6 million less than what the RFA is suggesting. That's just one column, one view, but it's not getting much notoriety. Now there's a restructuring to get there, but that's the type of conversation that I think we as a community need to have for the level of service that we want.
May I respond, Alicia? So a couple of quick things. So the Anderson Center is much more than a place for the arts. It's a community space. It's a play field. It's a place where people from all walks of life in Edmonds come and enjoy. And the loss of that would be a much greater problem than just the arts. But with regard to the funding model for the RFA, which I think is being discussed by the Con Committee, I mean, that's just not an option with the RFA. And in fact, as recently as like 2 weeks ago, Shoreline annexed into an RFA with other neighboring cities, as well as Briar and Montlake Terrace and others. This is a model that works for communities all over our region and is not one that people should be suspicious about or scared about. Like I said, just last week, the voters of Shoreline voted to an RFA. And so there's nothing scary about that. Starting the Edmonds Fire Department is a castle in the air. That's not going to happen. Back in 2009, when Gary Hawkinson was mayor, we got rid of the Edmonds Fire Department because it wasn't a financially feasible thing. And we're not going back there. And it's completely cost prohibitive. You don't just like put duct tape and add water and you have a fire department. We're talking about years and years and years, and time is of the essence.
I think we'll move on to the next audience question. Thank you.
Okay, Bill Krapik again. Does this work? It works. So I don't think that the Edmonds Fire Department is a castle in the air by any stretch of the imagination. I told you before, I've done a lot of research. Vancouver, Washington has a private ambulance service, AMR, nationally recognized. I'm currently doing part of what I think that the city should be doing, which is an analysis of the Vancouver, Washington Fire Department. There's a city in California, Placentia, California, down near Disneyland, 52,000 residents. They had the same problem that we've had here, which is that their county fire department just continuously ratcheted up the price. They said, wait a minute, that's too much. We're going to set up our own fire department. They did. 52,000 residents, $10 million a year to run the fire department with a private EMS service. Spokane, Washington, private EMS service, far less expensive than the RFA here. What Jim has said is, we want a pause. We want to know, what are the details? What do you guys on the Yes Committee know that we don't know? Where is all the analysis that shows that it's impossible to set up an Edmonds Fire Department? Where is the analysis that shows that $21 million is what's required for fire service in Edmonds for 42,000 residents? You know what that costs per resident? Where is all of that information? I'd love to know.
A pause in and of itself would cost an inordinate amount of money. Not only would we have to rebuild our fire department from scratch, we would have to hire all new firefighters because again, those firefighters do not belong to Edmonds. They are part of the South County Fire. We would have to rebuild all of the infrastructure and resources. And by the way, in the years it would take to build that infrastructure, we would have to pay double because we would have to pay the RFA to continue to provide us our fire service while we were rebuilding that. So it is extremely expensive, that option, to even consider rebuilding a fire department, which to Adam's point is one of the reasons why multiple mayors and city councils over the last 15 years have all said Edmonds cannot afford its own fire department.
Thank you.
And I would preface that by saying this is a bit of a adversarial question. But I appreciate dialogue here with a retired attorney. That's your wheelhouse. So, oh, sorry, retired from Snohomish County Prosecuting. Thank you. So I'm a past resident of Shoreline and follow their services still. And I know as I read their public information available to voters for the RFA vote that they had on the ballot in January, that there was no cost difference. Lake Forest Park, Kenmore, City of Shoreline, all served by the same firefighters and paramedics. So when they went from a contract base, where when you live in Lake Forest Park in Kenmore, to RFA, flat cost. What they're paying in 2025 is the same they're going to pay in 2026. Now, the taxation model changed. They were paying on contract price in 2025. They're paying on assessed value of their property in 2026. But those folks, let me tell you, I think they're like brilliant. They managed the transition. It was a multi-year process. And when they felt like they were ready to have an RFA annexation vote, they had it. So my question to you, Con Committee, is when you mentioned Shoreline as an example, why didn't you let us know that there is no cost difference for the residents of Shoreline who have been annexed into the RFA? I think you gave me half of the story, and that was inappropriate.
Well, I guess you're assuming bad intentions on my part, and I would take exception with that because I think we all come to this, all six of us, from a place of principled disagreement. And so I will, I guess, try to take that not in the spirit in which it was given. But the reality is that we are in a different situation with our RFA because whether we annex or whether we do something else, costs are going to continue to go up. So it really doesn't matter. My point about the RFA and Shoreline is the funding model that the Con Committee was taking exception with. I wasn't saying that, I wasn't addressing the cost to the jurisdiction. I was simply addressing the funding model. And the reality is that costs are going up either way. And I would go back to the fact that the Fitch report was an independent report done by an emergency management services company that determined that annexation was the best price at the best value. And there has been process here. We've been talking about this to death since September. There has been public dialogue. There has been this. There has been other forums. We will continue to do this. The voters will have a choice. I take exception with the fact that this has been a rush process. We've been talking about this since before December.
That is rush.
Hi, my name is Karen Barnes. I'm an Edmonds resident. I just had a question as I'm listening today, and maybe I missed it. If so, I apologize. Is annexation, is that an irreversible decision? And what I mean by that, so let's say that there is an approval on the ballot initiative in April, and 5 years down the road, I would go, you know what? We want to rethink that. Is that rethinkable?
It is rethinkable. And actually, Will Chen, one of the council members, has addressed that quite a bit in city council meetings and in other public forums. So it can absolutely be changed.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a minute.
Well, just put, I agree that it is reversible, but the terms under the reversion are different than saying no right now.
Say that one more time.
Well, I mean, for instance, how we get our rolling stock back, whether we have to pay for it and things like that. So there are a lot of other nuances between pausing right now versus saying yes and then expecting and revisiting it later with a trying to
That makes
de-annex.
sense. And I think I have seen that. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't think I have another question, but if you guys want to each give sort of like a closing statement, yes, I think that would be good.
Well, I guess I'll go because I didn't get to present at the beginning. And how much time do I have, Alicia, approximately?
2 minutes.
Okay, 2 minutes. I mean, I think we've really kind of made our points. I want to thank Alicia and Pastor and of course the 3 members, the volunteer members of the Con Committee, who have created a way, something for us to talk about. And I hope we've done the same thing. But really, this is a no-brainer for the citizens of Edmonds. This has been studied. It has been part of a long process. And I would say that if we talk about direct representation, I believe we will have that under the RFA because we will have spots for Edmonds commissioners, I believe, and I will be corrected if I'm wrong, and I apologize if I'm incorrect, but there will be Edmonds representation. There will be districts. And I'll leave with this, and I think most significantly is that you have had direct representation. You elected the members of your city council and your mayor, and 6 of 7 of the members of your city council support and endorse this effort, as well as the mayor. And those are people who come from a wide spectrum of political and ideological beliefs, who believe that annexation is the right thing, and so should you.
Thank you. And then the Con Committee.
Just wanted to comment about the shoreline matter. What he said is true. There was a RFA vote in January. There was just as much of a con presence within the cities of Lake Forest Park and Kenmore as there was here in Edmonds. And although the vote was in favor of the annexation, it was not a landslide by any means. It was I don't know the exact numbers, and I'm not going to.
66% in favor.
66? Okay. But there was opposition to it. There was a significant portion of the population that felt that there were alternatives and that Lake Forest Park and Kenmore had options and they should have exercised those options. In that instance, the voters chose not to.
Thank you all so very much for being here. I think there's a couple of things we can all agree on. One is there's never enough time to get everything in. And second, that this is still a contentious issue within the community, but I am very grateful to see that civil discourse was exercised for the most part. And this was never meant to be treated as an end all. I want to encourage these conversations to continue. I want to encourage outreach to those that are stakeholders to continue. This is not it. So please continue to reach out to one another. Other groups I know are putting on their own versions of these community conversations, and I encourage you to support those entities that are doing that, just as you supported this one today. So thank you. My goal in putting this together was to make these as listening sessions for people to get the information directly from those that are helping to influence those decisions, and that you can take that information and do with it what you will. So with that, last week we did do a virtual conversation with South County Fire. Thank you so much to Chief Eastman and Director Vele for being a part of that conversation, and that video is up on our organization's website. This will also be on the organization's website before the end of today. So thank you everyone that's watching on Zoom right now and those who will watch later. And again, just continue to have these conversations, everybody. I think that this is really important. And once that vote happens, I hope that we all remember that we are still neighbors and that we are still going to see each other at the grocery store and in the restaurants and all the other things that we'd like to do in and around Edmonds. So let's make sure that we are community members and neighbors first beyond anything else. With that, thank you again, Pastor Tim and Edmonds Lutheran Church for hosting us today. Thank you to everyone that submitted questions, both online and here today. And I look forward to doing more of these kind of conversations in our community in the near future. So thank you and have a wonderful rest of the day.